For this episode, I would like to start with a test. If you are a leader of other people, this one is for you today. Think through, for the following questions that I'm going to ask you, how many of these questions you would say yes to versus no. Are you ready? Time for a test. Do you find yourself frequently working long hours? Does your team constantly need you? Are they always contacting you with questions, approvals, even when you're quote unquote off the clock? Do you find yourself frequently redoing other people's work? Do you have a hard time delegating? Do you attend all staff and other meetings, such as customer meetings, even the ones that people on your team could possibly handle without you? Are you frequently dissatisfied with the results of your team? Are you frustrated with how people on your team do their job versus how you would do the exact same work? Do you take great pride or pain in critiquing or making corrections to other people's work? Be honest here. Is it very important to you to know where your team is and what they're working on at all times? Do you ask for frequent updates on where things stand with your team? Do you monitor your employees' activity? Could be social media, could be their status on Teams or other devices like that. Do you provide very detailed instructions for everyone on your team for how to get their work done? Do you blame others on your team when mistakes are made? Do you prefer to be CC'd on all emails or most emails? Do you not trust members of your team to make decisions independently? And do you have high turnover rates on your team? This was a test to evaluate whether you are a micromanager or not. Oh, now that I told you what it is, I will reread this list to you. I didn't want to tell you first because you would say to me, of course not. Of course, I'm not a micromanager. I hate micromanagers. I would never be a micromanager. Let's run through the signs again. Do you find yourself frequently working long hours? Does your team constantly need you? Are they always contacting you with questions, approvals, etc., even when you are maybe on vacation or after hours? Do you find yourself frequently redoing other people's work? Do you have a hard time delegating? Do you attend all staff and other meetings, such as customer meetings, and even the meetings that technically your team could probably handle without you? Are you frequently dissatisfied with the results of your team? Are you frustrated with how people on your team do their job versus how you would do it? Do you take great pride or pain in critiquing or making corrections to others' work? Is it very important to you to know where your team is and what they're working on at all times? Do you ask for frequent updates on where things stand with your team? Do you monitor your employees' activity, meaning how much time they spend on social media, what their status is, how often their green light is on, other ways of monitoring their activity through software and technology? Do you provide very detailed instructions for how to do work? Do you blame others on your team when mistakes are made? Do you prefer to be CC'd on all emails or most emails? Do you not trust members of your team to make decisions independently? And do you have high turnover rates on your team? So, again, this was a test to see if you are a micromanager or not. And I'm not going to tell you that if you answered so many yeses, that means you are a micromanager or not. But I think it's really important to set the stage for the fact that we all have the potential to be a micromanager. And I'm sure we also all have our own horror stories of being micromanaged. I know in my past, I have been required to CC my manager on everything. I remember one time I was in a conversation with a leader that I had just started working for, and she was talking very fast, and I was trying to keep up with her and let her know that I was following her. So I kept nodding my head, and I would say, right, right, right. And she stopped me and she said, why are you doing that? And I said, what? And she said, why are you nodding your head and saying right after everything I say? And I said, I just wanted to let you know that I'm tracking, I am listening, and I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm just acknowledging what you're saying to me. And she said, stop doing that. So that's just one of 1,000 stories I have. And I know you have them all too. But one thing that perplexes me is how often people will complain to me about being micromanaged. I mean, it is daily someone tells me that they are on the verge of quitting because their boss is a micromanager. Yet, every time I do leadership training, I will ask who here likes to be micromanaged or who here identifies as a micromanager. And everybody is groaning. Oh, that's the worst. I could never be a micromanager. And then they start telling me their horror stories of how they've been micromanaged. So, why I get perplexed by this is the fact that if every leader I work with tells me they hate micromanagement and they're not a micromanager, yet every employee I work with tells me they are being micromanaged, we have a disconnect somewhere. I suspect many of us leaders are exhibiting micromanaging behaviors and don't even realize it. So, as I walk through this episode and talk about micromanagement with you, I would ask that you just really take a deep breath, clear your mind, be open minded to the fact that you may unintentionally be exhibiting micromanaging behaviors. And we're going to talk about why that might be. We're going to talk about when it is appropriate to be a little bit extra in our managing behaviors and what to do if you feel like, oh my gosh, I've just had a total self awareness, mind blowing moment and am realizing that I am a micromanager. We're going to talk about all of that in this episode today. So let's talk about why we micromanage. Essentially, it all comes from fear. At the end of the day, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, it is about fear. It could be a fear of failure. It could be a fear of looking bad to other people. It could be that we are a perfectionist. And when we have a team of people around us, we feel responsible for them being perfect as well. Because again, we don't want to fail or look bad. It could be that we truly lack trust in the people that are on our team. And I understand that. First of all, there's a lot of situations that can cause that. Number one, you may be in a situation where you inherited a team. So these aren't the people I picked. Maybe these aren't the people I would pick if I had the option. Maybe I'm just new to the team and I don't know these people and therefore I don't trust them because I don't know them. Or perhaps they aren't performing at the level they need to and their actions don't match their words. And because of that, you don't trust them. So there's a lot of things that could be going on to cause that. And I do want to acknowledge that there's some very real scenarios. Maybe they are brand new to the organization. That's another one. And so you just haven't spent time with them. All of that can impact your level of trust. Maybe you feel like you've been burned by people before. And keep in mind, maybe not even the people you're currently working with, but maybe you're carrying a little bit of baggage from previous roles with you. And you know, our brain loves patterns and loves to tell us, ooh, I've seen this movie before. And we do that with people sometimes. We can judge people based on similar people that we've interacted with in our past. It could be that we are feeling pressure from the top. I have worked in organizations where you were expected to know the answer to everything. Saying, I don't know, wasn't good enough or acceptable. Saying, hold on a second, let me contact the person that knows that and I'll get right back to you, wasn't acceptable. And so, of course, in that type of an environment, that is going to breed micromanagement. I think sometimes for people, it is a matter of not understanding what their value is or their worth is. According to Forbes, 48% of all bosses like to be seen as experts and authority figures. And I think a lot of times we have an assumption that if I am a people leader, number one, I'm supposed to know more than everybody that reports to me. And number two, I'm more important than those people because obviously I have a bigger title and a bigger salary. And number three, I should work harder and do more than those people as well. And that's not necessarily the case. But oftentimes we get promoted for technical expertise, achievement, high levels of performance. We got results over and over again. And because of our successful track record of getting results, we are now put in a position where we are leading other people, and it is their job to get results. And that may leave us thinking, well, then what am I responsible for now? What value do I bring? Guess what? Your value is how well you lead those people and how successful they are. But a lot of organizations don't tell you that. And so the pressure that you now feel is to get results, but through other people. Ooh, lack of control. We don't have control when we're in those situations. And nobody likes to not feel in control of what's going on. And that's really what micromanagement is about. It is about fear and it is about control. And the more I can control things and people and control outcomes, the more comfortable I will feel about the future. And the future is tricky for a lot of us because we have a fear of the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen next. But if we can just control what's going to happen next, we will feel a lot better about it. And that gives us job security too. I know my role as a leader. I know my worth as a leader. And if I have ultra successful people on my team that are all doing what they're supposed to be doing, then they will want me here. This company will want me here for the expertise that I bring, and I will have job security. So, fear, control, fear, control. This is basically the root of most issues people struggle with, just as an FYI. Keep that in mind. You can apply it to many things. So that's why many of us micromanage and may not even be aware of it. But I want to talk about the impact of it because you need to understand the impact that these behaviors are having on your team, whether you're aware of exhibiting these behaviors or not. And I'm just going to say we all have some level of this. Even me, and I hate being controlled, but even I have some element of it. Okay, so I'm going to be the first one to say that I am guilty of these behaviors sometimes. And so let's just assume we all could get better in this space. The impact this has is when you are micromanaging other people, you are basically saying to them, I think you're incompetent and I don't trust you to make good decisions on your own. Therefore, I'm going to think for you. And I know you're thinking, that sounds really harsh, Laura, but I'm serious. That is what it feels like. That's how it's being perceived. I think you're incompetent and I don't trust you to make good decisions on your own. Therefore, I'm going to think for you. Now, how many of us would be willing to actually say that to someone's face? Not many of us. But how many of us are acting in a way that that's essentially what we're saying? Oof, it doesn't feel good. And I'm sure you can think of times that you've been micromanaged. So reflect on those moments. How did that make you feel? Did you love it? Doubtful, except for one scenario, which we'll talk about later. When you micromanage, you are handcuffing your team. You are impacting their productivity and your own productivity. This is another trap I see a lot of leaders getting themselves into is they're trying to do the work of everybody on their team and their own work as well, which is why we have a tendency to end up working really, really long hours because I'm pretty sure that your job in and of itself is a full-time job. But then when you try to take on the work of other people, because I can just do it faster if I do it myself, or they're not going to do it the way I want to do it. And I don't have time to explain it to them. So I'm just going to do it myself. Or, ooh, I really like this task. I'm really comfortable with this task. This is how I can show value and create security for myself. So I'm just going to do it myself. All of those things contribute to you working a lot of hours. Plus, you're not really able to focus on the most important things, the reason that you are likely put into your leadership role in the first place. You are also not creating an environment where people feel supported and celebrated for their talents and skills. And the impact of that is that it makes people far less likely to speak up, to be innovative, and to go above and beyond. If I feel like my leader thinks I am incompetent, incapable of making decisions, and doesn't trust me, I'm going to be doing the bare minimum to survive that job. And guess what else I'm going to be doing? Looking for another job at the same time. You also are getting yourself in a situation where you are encouraging people to stop thinking for themselves. This is called learned helplessness. And the results of that could actually be really dangerous. We're talking safety issues, potential safety issues, depending on where you work. And an over reliance on you to the point that you are never going to be able to maneuver away from working really long hours and transition into another role in the organization. If you create an over reliance of your team on you, guess what? Next time an opportunity comes up for a promotion, well, we can't move him or her out of that spot. They're too critical in that role. Feels like that would be a good thing, but you're actually limiting your own progress. And if you heard my episode on motivation, you'll remember one of my favorite books written by Dan Pink called Drive, and it's about what motivates people. The three main factors are autonomy, mastery, and sense of purpose. Autonomy being I have the ability to choose my own destiny, to choose the outcome and result myself. Mastery, of course, is being expert level at something, and sense of purpose, contributing to something that is bigger than me alone. So when you're micromanaging someone, you are actually taking away all three of those. Think about it. You are controlling the outcome. You are taking away opportunities for people to learn and fail and get back up again and try something different. They are not able to master something if you're doing it for them. And you're certainly taking away their sense of purpose. And as I said earlier, if they can't get their needs met on your team, they're going to leave and find some place where they can thrive. So this is a huge demotivator, and it's going to create turnover within your team, which is something that you really need to look at. If you have high turnover, you've got to get curious as to why. And choosing to just blame everyone, well, they're terrible anyway, so or they just don't have what it takes to be successful here. There's only so many times we can blame the other person before we recognize maybe we're contributing. Maybe it could be us as leaders. I know it's hard. Truth bomb today, but we need to hear it. I need to hear it too. All right. So if you're sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I am a micromanager, or maybe there's just some things that I could do better. Because, like I said, we can all do better, myself included. Here's some things that we need to think about in terms of where we can improve and what we can get better on. And the first one is we got to set our ego aside. Oh, it's so hard. Our ego is there to protect us. Okay. But it can get out of hand. We have to get over ourselves. We are not the end all be all. We are a leader of a team. And that team has been put together based on their talents and their gifts and their skills and their abilities. And we rise and fall together as a team. So you got to get over yourself as the leader, okay? And you need to set really clear expectations. This is something I talk about all the time because we struggle with it. And it is such an essential part of leadership. If we can set clear expectations and clear vision for people, here's where we're going. Here's where we're driving towards. And then instead of telling people exactly every single step they have to take, like we're a Waze app, turn left here, turn right here, go straight here. Instead of telling people every single step they have to take, tell them where you're going. Tell them why. Tell them how important they are to achieving that. And then ask them, what's your plan for getting there? Just let them take a stab at it. Here's what I think I need to do. Here's the turns that I need to take. And then you can provide feedback from there. And speaking of feedback, we need to be giving more feedback. If someone is not meeting your expectations, instead of just doing their job for them and not telling them why, or reassigning work to somebody else because this person over here is incompetent, sit down with them and have a conversation about how they're not meeting your expectations. And then get their perspective on why that might be. Maybe we weren't clear in our expectations as leaders. Maybe they don't like their job. Maybe it's not a good fit. I don't know. We don't know till we ask the question. So we need to be able to give that feedback. And certainly when they are meeting our expectations, this is where we forget. We also need to give feedback on a job well done. The other thing that I think is really important is that we as leaders need to consciously decide where people have latitude and where they don't. This is something that we don't consciously think about, but we definitely send messages to people based on our behavior around where they have latitude and where they don't. But we don't actually sit down and think about what are the things that I am truly okay with people doing on their own and what things do I need to be included on or do I need to be a part of? And I'll give you an example. I used to tell people on my team, if you have to go to legal about something, I need to know about that. And I thought that was a very reasonable request, by the way, but that tells me that, hey, we're possibly going to take a pretty significant action within the organization. That's something I should probably know about and be a part of. Okay. So you just consciously decide, what do I need to be a part of? What don't I? And then communicate that. Where do people have latitude and where do they not have latitude? And then think about how to let go of the minutia. So I love this. This is from Muriel Wilkins, and it is the difference between managing and micromanaging is the micro word. We are expected to manage, but it's to the infinite level that makes people crazy. When you try to control everything, when you try to dictate everything, to the very last detail. And that's where we have to learn how to let go. And that can be so hard. If I am asking my son to clean the house, is he going to clean the house the way I would clean the house? Maybe, maybe not. And I have to decide whether I care more about the house getting cleaned and the skills that he is learning in cleaning the house versus what happens when I strip that from him and just choose to do it myself. I can't complain about, there's so much work that I have to do cleaning this house and nobody helps me. I took it away. But does he load the dishwasher the way I do? No. But did the dishes still get clean? Yes. And that's where we have to learn what battles are worth fighting and what aren't. And this is where I think a lot of leaders struggle is because stylistically, we do things differently from each other. There's a lot of different ways to get to a final destination. And just because I turn left and you turn right doesn't necessarily mean one is right and one is wrong. We all end up at the same place and maybe even took us the same amount of time to get there. So we have to decide whether we want to criticize someone's style, the how they go about doing something, versus saying, you know what? At the end of the day, they got the job done. May not have been how I would have done it, but it was effective and it works for them. Versus, nope, they didn't do it exactly how I would do it, and therefore that's wrong. It's tough. It's tough. But think about, how much are you controlling related to that? I also want to encourage you to take the time to really get to know your people on your team. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What motivates them? What work do they like to do? What work do they not like to do? And invest in them. Assign tasks based on what people are good at, where they excel, and focus on developing your team instead of controlling them. If we can take some of that energy that we put into controlling other people and just focus on developing them, challenging ourselves, how do I make this person the best version of themselves? Not by sheer force and willpower on my part, but how do I create conditions for that other person to thrive? Whew, what a victory that would be. The other thing we need to think about is giving credit where credit is due. A lot of times we have a tendency to want to take credit when things go well and blame others when things don't go well. And we need to flip the script. We need to look for opportunities every day to shine a light on the people on our team. Hey, you liked that report? Oh my goodness, so and so did it. Didn't they do a great job? I know. What a great asset they are to this team. And let's say someone on your team does make a mistake. Guess what? Buck stops with you. So you take the blame. You take the hit for that. Not, oh, yeah, you know what? So and so did that report and I'm sorry. They obviously didn't do a very good job. I'll talk to them about that. No, 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 no. It's your fault. So find those opportunities where you can give credit to the people that are doing well and take the blame when a mistake gets made, regardless of who made the mistake. I also think it's important to look at what you have on your plate. Write out your whole to-do list. Look at your goals and objectives for the year, and then focus on where you can add the highest value versus the tasks that you can delegate to somebody else. Where can you add the highest value? And what are the things that somebody else can take on and give them an opportunity to add value? I know, mind blowing, right? And many of you are doing this. So I would just say, keep it up. If you're doing these things, keep it up. If trust is an issue for you, start small and build from there. Give someone little things to do independently, little tests of judgment and decision making, see how they do. Remember, set very clear expectations and give feedback. And then if someone does well, then give them something a little bit more complex and see how they do with that. Look for those opportunities to help people develop and grow. And employ a coaching style. I talk a lot about coaching on this podcast, but it is asking questions, not telling people what to do. So, a very simple example is when you set your very clear expectations for an outcome that you're looking for. Hey, here's what success looks like in my mind for this project. That's when we pause and we say, what are your thoughts on how you can best contribute to that? What are your thoughts on what's most motivating to you about this project? How would you go about successfully achieving this goal? Those are coaching questions. It doesn't have to be that hard, I promise you. I mentioned a caveat earlier, and there are times when people need detailed instructions. When someone has never done a task before, when someone is maybe new to a role, when someone is feeling uncertain about something, those are the opportunities where we can be a little bit extra on our management style. The problem is we just have a tendency to treat people who are experts in their job this way. Here, let me tell you how to do that. Here, use this template that I created instead of your template. Again, there are situations where maybe someone's new to a role, new to a task, and they need a little bit of extra handholding. Of course, those would be appropriate situations. And if you're in doubt, just Ask, hey, how many times have you done this before? Oh, I've never done it before. Oh, okay. Well, what would be most helpful for you in terms of making sure? I want to make sure that you have all the resources that you need to be successful, but at the same time, I don't want to you to feel like I am micromanaging you. So, what would be the most helpful for you? How can I best support you as your leader? Oh, wouldn't that be great if someone asked us that question? And as we think about micromanagement and our role as a leader, I think it's really important to just take a step back overall and think about your role and what type of influence and impact you want to have on your team. What is your role? What is the purpose of you being a leader? Is it to control and dictate and monitor? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe you do have that as part of your job description. What do you want to be known for as a leader? What do you want your leadership brand to be? And what truly is going to allow your people to be the most successful? How can they thrive in their roles? What actions can you take that will directly attribute to someone else's success on your team? I'm going to guess it's not through controlling and monitoring. Just a hunch. A hunch that's been very validated on 20 plus years of experience. But think about truly, what do you want your influence and impact to be on other people? And get really clear about that. And then think about, am I acting in that way? If this is what's important to me, if this is what matters to me most, am I truly acting in this way? If someone came in and did a 360 or asked your team whether you are a micromanager or not, how would they answer that question? How would they answer the questions that I gave you at the beginning of this episode? Something to think about. Always reflect on your role and remember that while I may have been harsh in this episode, I am doing it out of care and concern because this world needs strong leadership. And you do have the potential to have a positive influence and impact on other people. So go out there and shine your light bright.